David, let me start with you. Apparently, when you guys are pitching House, there was no house in it.
Yeah, to begin with, at the very beginning, it started off as a medical mystery. It started off as the show that nobody remembers anymore from a year ago, Medical Investigations, to some extent. Hopefully.
Meow.
And that's why we're still on the air. So we knew the networks were looking for a procedural, they were looking for a medical show. We pitched them basically a medical procedural, and it evolved from there. And it evolved to the point where when I did an outline for the episode, I was really worried that they would just reject. This was months after they'd already bought it. I was worried they would reject it, and Paul gave me the brilliant advice to just not show them the outline. Because I felt like we pulled a bit of a bait and switch on them. It started off as so much of a procedural, and obviously there are huge procedural elements in it, but it became so much more character-driven.
David had this perception that he wanted, it was basically what do doctors really think of their patients? What does a doctor say when he leaves the room? And just make it such that the doctor says that while he's in the room. And that sounded,
Brilliant.
that made me laugh, and so we went with that.
It's not naturally a part of medical shows.
Well,
This is
it's
a real breakthrough.
but in medicine, if you really think about it, the dealing with the trauma of dying people and sick people day in, day out, a brand of humor, I think it's among police officers, I think it's among rescue workers, firemen, the only way to deal with it is with that kind of humor.
But the answer to your question is yes, it's a major breakthrough.
You don't need your thymus. We take it out, everything else is manageable.
Manageable. I thought you just cured me.
This is just diagnostic. Tensilon erases the symptoms of NG for 5 or 6 minutes. Sometimes less. This is exactly why I created nurses. Clean up on aisle 3.
I'm wondering if the script proved to be sort of that expansive for you, where you thought you'd written one thing and you met the actors and found something else. Katie?
Well, it's really interesting how a pilot comes together. I mean, under the best of all circumstances, we would have cast the role of House first, but because everybody is casting pilots all at the same time, it just doesn't work that way. I should point out also that it was a bait and switch because it wasn't called House at the time. It was untitled. So I think you really did sort of...
Had the title been House, it would have tipped them off.
I think it might have given them a clue. But in fact, since everybody's casting their pilot all at the same time, it's not as sort of an organized process as you would like. So we saw characters for every single role. I think Robert was the first one that was cast, and then Jennifer. And it was an easy casting process. I mean, everything came into place. And in TV, the other thing that's sort of interesting to me as opposed to movies is that you're meant to bring in several people for the role in TV, for the network. They come in and they read for the network, which is sort of unusual because, as you say, you sort of envision one character. There was only one person who read for House. As soon as we saw the audition that he had on tape, that was it.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. House. I'm going to be looking at your... Perfect.
I thought this will be 1 or 2 days a week.
Again, another bait and switch.
Yeah, it never occurred to me, not for a second. In fact, when the very first scene I read was a scene between House and Wilson, and I just assumed from the character description that Wilson was going to be, I mean, traditionally in American TV dramas, Wilson is the guy. He's the sort of saintly figure doing the right thing, trying to make the world a better place. And much to my amazement, I discovered that this was about a character who actually wasn't necessarily trying to make the world a better place. I mean, he was about solving problems, and inadvertently people's lives are improved by the solving of those problems because this is the job he's chosen. But he'd have been, if he'd chosen to be an arms dealer, it would have been a very, very different outcome. Because he'd do that very well too. But I did think it was a courageous thing, a courageous thing to do, to put such an apparently unlikable character at the center of it. Although, of course, that's what, personally, that's what I like about him, is that it's his unlikability. It's a paradox, I suppose. You know, the fact that he doesn't, this is a character who doesn't ask to be liked, doesn't ask for applause, doesn't ask for the world's approval. I think that's a very, he gets my approval for that reason.
Dr. House is a firm believer in good old-fashioned hard work.
Hugh, deservedly so, garners a lot of attention. He's fantastic, but the character ultimately, if he's just going up against people that are just melodramatic or just superficial, and he's just knocking them down and swatting them away. And it would be easy for that to happen with a character that's this outrageous and this smart all at once. It'd be really easy to just have, you know, the head of the hospital just go, you know, Hogan, basically. And it would be real easy to do that. And it's really tricky to do anything other than that. And it's so great, and you need characters that are really ultimately just as smart as him, or virtually just as smart as him, and just as interesting as him, or else his character gets lessened.
We're over the limit. We've got to start rewarming her or there'll be permanent damage.
Keep looking. There. I didn't see anything.
It was there.
You sure?
4 millimeters lateral to the hippocampus. I saw it.
House, she's out of time. She's going to be a vegetable.
I saw it.
It's good enough for me.
What each episode kind of does, and each character kind of, you know, balances is you know, the formula I thought about when we were doing this was that, or forming this from a behavioral standpoint or acting standpoint, is in the show All in the Family. The reason Archie Bunker can say these atrocious and terrible things is because there's Meathead. I don't know if you all remember this. There's Meathead there to be the liberal guy and to play a balance. So each character serves as a balance to anything he says. And just when Cuddy gets pig-headed, or Omar gets overly confident, or starts becoming House, then House garners your sympathy in some way. He solves something or brings it, and that kind of. And so there's this delicate balance, which is what makes it all kind of work.
Let's play doctors.
I removed the clot which caused the stroke. Problem is we don't know where it came from.
Did ultrasounds of her heart, arms, and legs all cleared.
Could be a protein C deficiency.
Wouldn't explain the movement disorder.
Nothing explains everything. What if it's a crime syndicate? Let's say Ritalin and the fertility meds plotted a caper. Ritalin takes care of the psychosis, the flailing.
I still don't think Ritalin.
Fertility meds are competitive by nature. They had to do something bigger, something really unexpected.
Fertility treatments have been known to cause endometrial cancer.
Which could cause clots, which could have caused her to stroke.
So ultrasound her uterus this time. See if there's something growing in there that doesn't look adorable in a onesie.
I do think if I did anything right in this whole process, it was to get that aspect of the character very quickly from reading it. I just had a very clear sound in my head about when I read this dialogue. I just knew how it should sound. And I've never really sort of deviated. My day is spent trying to achieve the sound I had in my head when I first read that page. Really, that's what I struggle with. Because I just feel like if I may say so, I feel like I understand what the man is trying for. And it's like a sort of piece of music that he writes dots on the page, and I think, well, that's going to sound like that. What was that?
He's great. He's great. He's great.
No, he's great. No, he's great. No, he's really great.
Can't we just agree?
Do you know why people are nice to other people?
Oh, I know this one. Because people are good, decent, and caring. Either that or people are cowards. If I'm mean to you, you'll be mean to me. Mutually assured destruction.
We wanted him. I think it was Paul's idea. We wanted him to be. We wanted him to be wounded, both internally and externally, and we wanted to see that. It's a lovely metaphor to begin with, and number one, and number two, if he's just this good looking and that smart, and he's bitching about everything, it's tough to get any sympathy from him.
What's wrong with your foot?
War wound.
Does it hurt?
Every day.
Is that why you're so sad?
Oh, aren't you adorable? I'm not sad, I'm complicated. Chicks dig that. One day you'll understand.
It's a strange character, as you said. It's when I first read the script, I thought it was sort of the Watson Holmes thing, and then the more we did the show, I realized it really wasn't. If anyone's Watson, the three of them are collectively, like Tony, Orlando, and Dawn. They're sort of Watson. And I think what's really been fun over this year, especially, is it's become more kind of like I can't think of anything less pretentious than King Lear's Fool, but someone who's there to kind of because I don't work for him and he doesn't work for me, and I actually choose to be with him, as opposed to everyone else on the show has to be with him. And I think, and I keep chirping in his ear, I think, in a lot of ways, the truth. There must be something better than the Fool, but that example of the sort of, that's what he's...
Pooh and Tigger. Pooh and Tigger.
Or Pooh and Tigger, as I once used.
How awkward was that? What's he doing here anyway? He's got physio Tuesdays and Fridays.
Mark is in group therapy for people coping with disability. He was thinking about developing a drug addiction, but that would be stupid.
Hey, you again.
It's fascinating to me because your choice to play her is determined.
Yes.
I mean, she's always going to make this kind of thing work.
Yes. Yeah, well, there's certain things she believes in. I mean, there's certain things that she stands on that she will not let down about, and that is the foundation. That is her almost religion, in a sense, her ethics and her morals and her values and the things that she's decided are her identity for her at this point in her life, so there is no breaking her on that stuff. And that's why I think season 2 has been kind of interesting, because in season 2 you start to see her step out of the box a little bit. You start to see House's influence on her, where she is a little bit manipulative when she leaves the pills in the patient's room to see if she takes them to prove her point. There's subtle things, but things that she wouldn't have done in the pilot episode.
All the characters are doing that.
So it's kind of interesting to see that she does have these certain ethics and standards that she's standing on, and she has the vulnerabilities and sort of her heart on her sleeve in a way, but in that world, in that structure that she set up for herself, she's starting to put her toe in the water here and maybe put her foot in the water there, and you start to see how that starts to have a domino effect on someone's identity.
If a Munchausen's patient thinks she's about to get busted, she sees pills labeled dangerous, might cause seizures, she might grab a couple. And if that label were accidentally on a bottle of antibiotics, and if that bottle were accidentally left in her room...
You set her up?
Might have. It's Munchausen's. All this she did to herself.
We decided that for Chase we were going to have a guy who was running away from something. He was a guy that was basically to get where he wanted to be, he would do anything that he had to do. So on one side, he's a kid that does have a humanity, and he does like patience, and he went to seminary school, and he's got a sort of a belief in God, but an anger for God. But on the flip side, to make him interesting, we wanted a guy who would sell his soul. Not completely sell his soul, but do whatever he had to do to get to where he wanted to be.
People really get to relate to not only our characters, but the characters that are the patients in the show. Yeah. You really get to feel people's lives. We get some interesting characters in there. We get some interesting stuff in the clinic. Jelly's the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, that's so disgusting.
Right? But you get a little humor to take the edge off of that stuff, and then this way people, relate to the characters as human beings.
Okay, we have a neurological problem here.
There's something wrong with my brain?
Oh yeah.
It's a sort of a subtle difference in the sense I don't think the characters change that much, but stuff is revealed about them, and you learn more about them. And in that sense, they may appear to change. And there's going to be some change. There's going to be some growth, but it's got to be really subtle. It's more about learning more about them, and at the same time, revealing other mysteries. That really is the challenge, is for everything you reveal to raise questions at the same time.
Is that a part for you, Katie, just sort of keeping that sort of core of the
I
character
think it's
central?
important that they have a lot of sex next season. That's all.
We would love to know where the show is going. I think David would love to know where the show is going. I mean, it's, you know, I don't really mind particularly where the character goes, as long as it's in line with how the show is going and how it's written. And you know, I think that the show will you know, it will develop and change over time. But I'm not really too fussed about what act specifically happens to my character or any character. I think it's just as long as the show itself grows and develops and continues to do the good work that we've been doing all along.
I think it'll be a successful spin-off with me. It'll be me and Julie Christie. It'll be called Wilson and Mrs. Miller. And I'm very excited about it.
I have no idea. I don't know. As long as, I don't know. Foreman's thing is to not become House. So.
Well, he sort of got to be House for a little bit when he was.
Yeah, so we'll, I don't know. You know, kids and a wife or something. I don't know.
You should birth a bunch of babies, and one will be nearsighted, and one will be blonde, and one will be black, and one will have a
Yeah, one should be black.
And everybody will be so confused. What's she been up to? What goes on in that office?
Now that's a Fox show.
I have nothing but blind, unquestioning trust in my leaders, and I look forward to whatever direction they see fit. It's apart from anything else, I actually think that my theory about television is that by and large, characters are, the central regular characters actually don't change, don't go anywhere. That's sort of what defines television as opposed to film.
There's a difference between television.
Peripheral characters change, they fall in love and die and whatever. And the central characters tend not to.
What are you saying?
No, I'm just that with life events. Life events. And in films, it tends to be the other way around. But so I'm actually, in that sense, content for House to sort of remain. I mean, things can be revealed and slight variations upon a theme, but it is about remaining the same in a sense, much like people do.
I'm not gonna kiss you, no matter what you say.